we're going to be acting out the cell-mediated response.
Hey, Auntie Jen, let's go steal some cars. After all, that's what we do.
What a great idea, Vira, us. I'll infect this one, and you go infect another one. Ready? Break! Hey, you! I want your car.
But it's my car.
Not for long.
Oh no. Oh no, it looks like a hoodlum has just taken over my car. Gasp!
The virus has infected the cell.
Mwahahaha! Now I have taken over this car. My plan is working. Now all I have to do is take over other cars too. Wait, what was that? It looks like there's a police officer.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Why, hello there, officer.
Help me, officer, help me!
What can I do for you, officer?
I need your license and registration, ma'am.
My license? Okay, here it is. I don't know what you're looking for. I'm just a normal lady driving a normal car on a normal day. All normal.
Well, ma'am, this license is for Illinois.
Is that a problem?
Yes, because we're in Canada, and you have a license from Illinois. Seems like you're a foreigner. We don't like foreigners around here.
So what does that... Ah! I'm being engulfed.
The macrophage arrives and engulfs the infected cell.
Oh, silly Auntie Jen. She thought she could get away with this. Hey, General, check this out.
The antigen has been presented to the helper T cells.
Oh no, this is clearly a terrorist. I'm going to have to call for the special forces for this one. Who knows how many of these terrorists are lurking about.
Ring, ring.
Hello?
Hey T, I think I found something.
What is it?
I think it's a terrorist.
A terrorist?
Sure is. That's why I'm calling you. The special forces to take care of it. After all, I'm just a general. Don't expect me to do any fighting.
Of course. We'll get right on that. Hey, killer. Guess who just called me?
Who?
The general. They found something.
Oh, really? That can only mean one thing. Trouble. What is it?
A terrorist.
A terrorist? That's our specialty.
I guess it's a good thing she called us then, isn't it?
Sure is.
All right, let's go.
Dun, 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 dun.
The helper T cells stimulate the killer T cells, and the killer T cells are activated by the IL-2.
This must be the terrorist we're looking for. We'd better look out for any identical twins.
La, 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 la. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just a little old normal lady. Nothing unusual happening here. No, not at all. Just me, a normal lady driving my car.
Hey, look there. That looks like this Auntie Jen person.
They could be twins.
She must be a terrorist, too. And you know what this means. Excuse me, ma'am.
Who are you?
We're the special forces.
Special forces for what?
To destroy terrorists like you. Pro for an attack.
The killer T cells release peripherin.
Please stop. I'm just a little old lady. I'm not Auntie Jen. Please. Officer, help me. Ha ha ha. What a silly lady. Clearly you are a terrorist. I think anybody could see that.
Yeah, take that, terrorist. And that.
Oh no. Ew, I'm melting. I'm melting.
The pores open and the infected cell lyses.
I'm bad.
Yay.
Fiend? Okay. So, can you all go through, you didn't specifically say what cells you were. We heard general, we heard officer. So can you kind of remind everybody what you were portraying before we ask questions?
Oh, I'm the narrator.
So I was supposed to be the normal, body cell.
And I was the antigen that infected the normal cell.
Now hang on 1 second there. So you were the pathogen that infected the cell, and you had an antigen which was the wrong license.
Yes.
So that's a hard one. Sometimes people use antigen in place of pathogen, but that's not right. There's like a self-antigen and a non-self antigen. So just to be clear. Okay, perfect.
I was the officer that was replacing the macrophage, and I engulfed the pathogen and took the antigen and transferred it to.
So you're the macrophage, and you became an APC, an antigen-presenting cell.
Yeah.
I was a helper T, so I took the license from Seagal.
And how would that work in reality? In I guess what I'm saying, if you looked at the cellular level, what would that look like?
I have something like I will match up to the antigen that's at the surface of
My skin, I guess.
of the macrophage.
So the helper T will have a receptor
Yeah.
on it, and that receptor will be like a lock and key fit with the license that's being presented on the macrophage.
Yeah.
And then as the general, there'll be recognition, and then you'll release signals.
Yes.
Okay, now keep going.
Right, which was the phone call.
Which was the phone call.
And then I called for.
And then in reality, that phone call, what's the actual thing that's making the phone call? What's that? So some sort of chemokine, cytokine, some sort of chemical messenger. You went right to the very specific, but yeah, absolutely. So I think we left off here. So is Fabiola? Fabiola, what were you?
I was a virus that infected another cell.
Okay, so you were the infected cell, the cell that was infected by the virus.
The car represented that a cell, and then I was the virus.
You're the virus inside the cell.
Right.
So like taking over the cell. You were like kind of driving the car, like hijacking the car. Okay.
And me and Nick were killer T cells.
Okay. And then what was the spray bottle?
Perfume.
And what does that chemical do?
It creates pores in that, so that way it ends up lysing, so it ends up getting destroyed after all the holes tear up the cell membrane.
Okay. So you killer Ts, what you're actually doing are you're killing the infected body cells. In this case, in this example that you just came up with, you're killing the body cells that were infected so it doesn't spread. Okay. So now, questions from the class.
I think Mr. Urban said this earlier, but I'm still confused what the difference between a pathogen and an antigen is.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
So a pathogen would be like the virus or the bacteria that is actually entering the cell. The antigen is what's with that pathogen that when the macrophage engulfs it, it takes that and puts it on its membrane, so that way you can recognize that pathogen when it comes back or when it's still in the body, so you can kill it.
So, for example, like Lindsay was the bad person that hijacked Morgan's car or cell. And then what happened was that I took her license away from her, which was the antigen, and then so that I could give it to Juliana, the general, and then she could pass it on, and then find other people like Fabiola that carried the same virus.
So, but the key is, don't take the analogy too far. Nothing's actually being passed or exchanged. It's a series of interactions between receptors and antigens. And then chemical messages that are being released. And movement based on concentration gradients, like we saw in the last presentation. Okay, what other questions do we have from the audience here? Sonica.
So is an antigen, like, is it a protein? Is it a specific type of molecule, or is it
It's a protein embedded in the membrane
of the pathogen?
of the pathogen or your own cells. So if you remember, your red blood cells had different types of antigens, right? There were A antigens, there were B antigens. And so every type of cell has antigens. Your immune system recognizes self-antigens as being okay, and that doesn't evoke any sort of specific immune response. But if it sees ones that don't belong, that are non-self, then that'll initiate the specific immune response pathways, one of which is the cell-mediated pathway that they just talked about up here. Let me spin around. Yeah.
Could you clarify what the CD8 does and like what it was in this?
Yeah. Now, let me just say this about CD8s and CD4 and MHC1 and MHC2. Those specific things you won't be tested on. Well, what you should understand is that there are receptors, and what you should understand is what an MHC is. So MHC is basically the thing that presents an antigen on the cell surface. And then the CDs, those are the receptors that recognize. So, I mean, if you want, just for future reference, CD4 and MHC2 go together, and CD8 and MHC1 go together. The easy way to remember that is take the numbers and multiply them together, and they should both equal 8. 1 times 8, 4 times 2. At least that's the way I remember it. But you won't be tested on that specific thing. But you should understand a receptor versus MHC. All right, any other questions from the crowd? There's been no questions from our histamine group back there, our inflammatory response group. You guys are good? So what was the accuracy like? Tony and Jenny, did they follow the pathway?
They followed it very well.
Okay. Now, realizing they don't have to have everything exactly like it was on there, but is there anything on there that you have a question about, or anything that you think was out of sequence? Oh, we got dead air again. Yeah.
So on here it says that cytotoxic T cell is activated, and then TH cell also stimulates TC cell with IL-2. Is that are those together? Because it's activated.
Yeah, and then the stimulation of it really makes them go nuts, go start killing the cells. So it's basically recruitment, activation, kind of all in one. And it's kind of all real time. It's not really first this, then this. It's more of a concurrent process.
Wait, I don't really understand for the MHC1, is that like a molecule that is attached to the macrophage which binds to the antigen? Or is it...
Yeah, so these MHCs, they're part of our own cells.
Okay.
So that's the way to think of it. So the MHCs, they'll actually present the foreign antigens on the surface.
Of like the infected cell?
And then, right, and then the receptors, they're on our T cells.
Okay.
At least in this presentation. Yeah.
How does a helper T cell activate a cytotoxic T cell?
Helper T cell activate the killer T cells? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Well, we just talked about it's the IL-2. It secretes IL-2, which is the chemical that the killer activates and stimulates the killer T cells that kind of initiates specific response because it's going to the killer T cells to react to the specific antigen that it recognized.
So that would be the phone call, how they got, it, and then try to look for him. Alright.
I think on one of the videos that was on the scavenger hunt, they had interleukin 1 and 2. I think at least that's what they had. Is there a difference between those?
There is, but just scaling down this unit this year with the amount of time that we have, just know in general what an interleukin does. We're not going to make you differentiate between interleukin 1 and interleukin 2, class 1 MHC, class 2 MHC, CD4, CD8. But just understand the different types of chemical messages that can be sent in generally what they do. So what an interleukin is, just in general what cytokines do, that sort of thing. If you want to know what sort of terminology you have to know, we've been very specific and intentional in the targets. So the bold words in the targets, those are the ones that will hold you accountable for. Any last questions for this group? All right, thank you.